Thank you. I hope you enjoy your day and your trip, your run, as Michael calls it. A little bit about, just to put you in the picture about Newport. Newport is a fascinating town and has a tremendously interesting history. And I'll go back to the very beginning. Were any of you out at Burrishoole Abbey a few years ago when we went out there?
Yeah.
Because if you were out there, that's where, if you like, the original town was, out at the Abbey, right? So what happened to change the town from out there to here? And that's an interesting story. And it goes back, of course, let's go back as far as the coming of the Normans to Ireland in the 1160s. They came to Mayo about 1200, 1220. Names like de Burgo, from whom Burke, our former president, came from, and there was people like Jordan Exeter, Jordans, and lots of Staunton, another great name coming from the Norman tradition, and another one was Butler. And the Butlers of Ormond, believe it or not, were the first people to come here, not the de Burgos. And the Butlers came out to Burrishoole Abbey and they colonised the area out there because there was a very good deep harbour, and they built a small castle. Eventually they were replaced by the de Burgos, who became later on the Mayo Burkes. And those de Burgos held on to that area out there for a long, long time, until they ran out of money. By that stage they had become the very famous Dukes of Ormond from Kilkenny area, and they needed money to sustain their lifestyle. So they decided to sell their Mayo estate, and they sold it to a guy in Dublin Castle called Medlicott, who originally came from England. And Medlicott, after which that street over there, Medlicott Street, is named, he acquired this estate, 70,000 acres of land, halfway to Westport, stretching all up here, out that direction, Island 80, halfway to Castlebar, right around the bay out as far as Achill, and even a little bit of the Mullet Peninsula was part of that massive estate, the Medlicott estate. The linen industry, right? And we still have names left from that time, like we have a townland out the far side of town called Bleach Yard, right? And we have lots of things around Mayo, like Linen Hall Street in Castlebar, and the Linen Hall in Castlebar. Linen industry has grown. So he gets great businessmen to come to the town, the Society of Friends, Quakers, and they come to the town and they're living along Medlicott Street, and because the houses are being built there. If you look over there at the houses for a moment, if you see the nice stone finish there, that stone for sale, it's actually for sale, where the boat is passing now. You see the two little houses to the left of that, they've one door, one window downstairs and one window upstairs. That's your typical, they were stone finished and they were typical of the houses of that time. They're originals, right? So if you clean off the plaster work, you go back to the original stone placing on those houses. Some of the houses have been amalgamated and joined up together, but there's a few here again. There's another house here, you can see one yellow friends, and they're going to set up a linen industry, but they run into problems, and the problems that they run into are as follows. They're out of touch with other Quaker communities for their children to marry into. So they've other little problems. I think one of their own people was a bit dubious in business, and I think he squandered some money, or some money disappeared. But by 1730 they're in serious bother, and they've left Newport and gone, and they've headed off down near Moat, and they continue to live down here. So Pratt's town, he had started to build some of the main street over there, mostly Medlicott Street. The river is still forded by horses. There's no bridges or anything at this stage. So Pratt is a failure. Pratt loses heart and gives up and goes. And Medlicotts are wondering, what in God's earth are we going to do? And they come across a man called James Moore, whom I think is really one of the great men of this town in the 18th century. James Moore arrives, and no matter what I've done, I haven't managed to trace where his house was. I think it was over there somewhere, but he is a land agent for the Medlicotts, and he runs the estate for the Medlicotts. Highly successful. He's extremely successful in running the town. He builds the quays along here. Newport House is not there, by the way, at this stage. No Newport House, but he builds the quays and he plants beech trees all along there. Ships are coming in and trading. What's been traded? All the usual kind of things. Timber is still being traded out of here. Lots of townlands with the name Derry in front of them up around us here, meaning an oak wood. So there was lots of oak timber here. That was used for barrels. Fishing is very good off the coast. Fish are being salted, put in barrels and exported. Timber, as I say, has been exported. Cattle, hides, all that kind of stuff has been exported. And he's bringing in stuff like wine and things like that. And he's living a good life. Except he has one major problem in the 18th century. He has 4 lovely daughters and no sons. So there's no one to take over from him at the end of his time as land agent to run the estate. The Medlicots are getting a bit disheartened again at this stage, and they decide, what are we going to do? And here's what they do. One of the families that had arrived here from Northern Ireland, very famous Irish family, O'Donnells. Some of them had gone with the flight of the Earls and had headed off to Spain and to Rome and all kinds of places. But some of that family ended up in Ballycroy, and they made a few bob. And a colleague of mine, Peter Maloney, has done his research for his MA thesis on the O'Donnells, and he reckons that they made their money mostly out of smuggling. So they had the money to buy the Medlicott estate. And so in 1865 they did 2 important things. One, they went up to the Church of Ireland and they converted to Anglicanism, to Church of Ireland, to Protestant. That was the first thing they did. Now they could own land. They could hold a big estate. And the second thing they did was then buying the estate. And so began the O'Donnells regime here. The Medlicots had moved on and the O'Donnells took over. First thing they did was to show how powerful they were. They built Newport House, 1790s. So that house there is 20 years or whatever it is old. So having built the house, then they began to plan out their estate and do this, that and the other. And throughout the 19th century they began to decline because, again, they ran into a genetic problem. They had no sons, and all the daughters had to have a dowry, and the dowry drained the O'Donnells. And of course they were hit by the famine in the 1840s. The famine also reduced their tenant numbers, so they had nobody to pay them rents. People were leaving and going. Education was introduced, so people were getting an education and people were getting out and leaving and going elsewhere. Other things were happening. There was a cholera outbreak in 1832. There was lots of different little things happening to the town during the 19th century, but the O'Donnells were slowly going downhill, right? But there was another man came to the town whose name eventually became double-barreled Kerry Walsh. And when Walsh came to the town, he set up trading in the town, and he became the next important man in the town. And he developed the town right through to the end of the 19th century, when his family died out, as did the O'Donnells. The O'Donnells had no more sons left, so their estate was broken up and sold off by a thing called the Congested Districts Board. For the Congested Estates Board, which sold off the big estates, broke them down and gave them to farmers. And of course we had another famous man from Mayo at this stage started a lot of agitation about land, Michael Davitt, right? And this is why you made me go along. just to mention his name. So Ireland was changing at the end of the 19th century. Davitt and Parnell and these were fighting for the breakup of estates, and so the whole O'Donnell estate, parts were being sold off. They'd no money to sustain their lifestyle. Lots of things. Kerry Walsh was building up, of course, as the first real layman to build up a very good business in the town. He was so well off that at the end of his days he gave an awful lot of money towards the building of the Catholic Church there, that's what he gave, which was an enormous sum of money. And when the church was finished in 1918, of course, he was dead at that stage. But you can see, well, it's a fabulous, and it's known as a Celtic Romanesque style of building. Very well worthwhile going up just to look at the front door. Now, when you go into the church itself and see the stained glass windows, the Harry Clark stained glass windows, which were bought by the priest who was in charge of the church, of the parish priest at the time, he spent his entire life savings, £600, to get these windows done. So if you get a chance at some stage while you're here, if you like art and that type of stuff, the Harry Clark stained glass windows behind the high altar, the Resurrection, fantastic. Best seen in the morning with the sunlight coming through it. But there's some of the people who were involved in the town.